Hey guys, welcome to the Electron Academy. My name is Hussein and I'm going to be your instructor for this Python series. So, today we have a very exciting video. Last time we covered conditionals, a very important part of programming, not just Python in general, but other programming languages. And what the if conditional basically does is it executes a statement depending on a condition. So, if something is true, it'll do this. If something is false, then it won't do that. And then you can design this in multiple ways, just so your in different ways so your program can run. And today we're gonna be covering nested ifs. So it's kind of like doing an elif or an else after the if, but it's kind of different. So we'll see what we mean by that. But the first thing you have to understand is what nested statements are. So nested statements are statements that are present inside the body of another statement. So let's say, for example, I have a for loop. You can do nested statements with many things, not just specifically if statements. You can do them with loops. You can do them with other things. It's very versatile. So nested statements can be something inside of something. So I have a for loop, okay, for example, and I won't go into details because it's just an example. So I have a for loop. Inside of that for loop, I can put another for loop, and then I can put another for loop inside of that for loop. So I can have one main for loop, and then I can have another for loop inside that, and then I can have a third for loop inside that. Or what I can also do is, instead of having the third for loop inside the second for loop, I can have it next to the second for loop. What do I mean by that? I can have the first for loop, and inside that I can specify two for loops that are not inside of each other but rather next to each other. So the best way to understand this is using a hierarchy. So file systems, for example, I'm sure you've used files, for example. So imagine you have a tree, okay? The tree's roots are starting from your main file, and then they branch out into the files that are inside that main file, right? And then if you go inside those files, they branch out even more and even more, and that creates a hierarchy or a tree of different files. The same thing with this programming logic. So you have the for loop. That's the main for loop. Inside that, when you open the for loop of kind of like a file, you find that it has one file, like another file inside it, or in this case another for loop inside it. You look inside that file and you have another file inside it, or you have the third for loop inside the second for loop. What you can also do is, when you click on the main file, you can see two files next to each other, so in the same directory, and they're kind of, I guess you could say, the files are brothers and sisters if you talk in a hierarchy. Like in a hierarchy, that's basically how our hierarchies work in a family tree, for example. So you start with the main person, and then it keeps branching out, from siblings to sons to daughters to cousins and all of that. So that's basically the best way to explain nested statements, kind of like directories. So directories can have brothers and sisters, sons, daughters, and all of that. And we're going to be exploring that practically now, using REPL.it, and we're going to explore why and how we use nested statements, and why don't we use an else or elif instead. So let's get right into that. Okay guys, now we are going to get into the practical part of this video, and what we're going to be doing is creating nested conditionals or nested if statements. So this is a normal if statement. If 7 equals 7 colon, and let's say print this worked, for example. So if I run this command over here, it prints out this work. Why does it do that? This condition is true. 7 is the same as 7. It's comparing the two values over here. This double equal operator compares the two values on the left and on the right. So 7 is the same as 7, and since that's true, they are the same as each other. It prints this. And let's say, for example, we put an 8 over here. So this is a false condition. 7 is not the same as 8, so it's not going to print out this work. And instead we can type an else, and now we can do, for example, this 9 equals So else it'll do something else, right? So now that this condition is false, uh, I can just write this didn't work, and if I run this on the console, that's what it prints out, because this first condition is false, and then it automatically goes to the else condition. But if over here we added an elif instead, and then we write the condition over here, so elif 8 equals 8, and then over here we wrote what we actually wanted to write, the what is going to do if this condition is true. So I'm gonna print this also worked. Okay, and now if I run it, it's gonna print this. It's not gonna print the last statement. As you can see, it print this also worked, so it printed the second one. Why? The first condition was false, so it skipped it and went on to elif. It checked the elif condition, it's true, so it printed that out. If this condition were to also be false, then it would go to the last option, else. And keep in mind, elif are usually put in the middle, and else is a last resort, so you cannot have multiple else, and you cannot put an else in the middle over here. So you can't put an for example, you can't put an elif after an else. You have to put the else after the elif. Okay, so that's how this conditional formatting works. Now, what's a nested if? Imagine I wanted to write the same elif thing, alright, but I wanted to do something a little differently. What I mean by that, let me erase all of this, okay? This too. Now, I'll just recreate this condition, okay? And now, instead of writing the print function directly, I'm going to write another conditional in the same way. So let's say if 9 equals 9, and then I can write that over here, print this worked, and if I run it over here, it's not going to print anything. Reason being that this first condition over here is false. 7 is not the same as 8. 9 is the same as 9, but it did not print it. So let's break this down. Now, kind of like a file system, if I were to do something like this, kind of like this over here, and print this also worked. Now, what would have happened here? Let me just run it real quick, and you can see that nothing happens because this condition over here is false. But what if we were to make it true over here? What would happen? Both of these statements are gonna print together. Why? Imagine this is a file system, okay? You have the main file over here. When you double click it, you can see two files inside the inside the main file, right? So these are the two files that are inside this main file, and they both are next to each other, aka they're in the same directory. So you see both of these files as soon as you open this up. But what if we wanted to nest this inside of the second one? How would we do that? I could do something like this over here. First of all, I should remove the sprint function. You don't have to, you can leave it there, but I'm gonna remove it just for teaching causes. So 10 equals 10, all right, and then I'm gonna print it worked. And now what it's gonna do is it's gonna print just it worked. It won't print anything else. So if I run it over here, it prints it worked. That's the only thing it can print. Why does it print it? We start with the main file. When we double click it, we see another file. When we double click that, we see the third file, instead of the third file being in the same position as this file. So you get what I'm saying. This if statement is kind of like the parent of this if statement, and this if statement is kind of like the grandfather. So the father of this and the grandfather of this. So you get where I'm going with this, but that's basically how if statements, nested if statements work. So they're kind of like, I guess you could say, an alternative to using an else or else if and stuff like that. What do I mean by that? If 7 6 equals 6, all right, I print it worked. I know that it's gonna print this because the condition is true, right? But now, if I want to do something like maybe this, if 7 equals 7, elif, Okay, and then I write print. uh, it also worked. All right, now if I write this, it's not going to print the second part, it'll still only print this. Why is it doing that? The reason it's doing that is because this first statement has evaluated to true, so it stops over here. That's it. So you could say it kind of breaks over here. And yes, break is an actual keyword that you can use in Python. That is 100% possible. We're gonna be covering that in a later video though, when we cover cases and switches. So what this does over here is it's the elif part of this if statement, and it prints out something else, right? Or it does something else. But because the first condition has evaluated to true, it won't go towards the second condition. It breaks here, or it stops over here. It does not move on to here. But if I were to evaluate this as false, like this, then it's gonna go over here and it's just gonna print this part. So over here, I'm just gonna run it real quick, and let's see what the output is. Okay, so you can see that the output is this over here. Our repo crashed, so it also worked. It printed, it also worked. And why did it do that? This first condition evaluated to false. It's not true. 6 is not the same as 7. It moves on. It goes to the elif statement. 7 is the same as 7. That's the condition we put over here. That is true. 7 is the same as 7. Hence, it prints out this it also worked phrase over here. It can do other stuff as well. And because of this over here, a question that may arise into mind: what if we wanted to print this and this? What if we wanted to print both of them together? What would you do then? So an answer that may come into your mind would be, why don't we just do this? So you could just copy this out, right? And then you could just paste it in here. That would work. If I run this over here, then it'll work. I just need to make the condition true, and now if I run it, then both of them are gonna print out. As you can see that both of these statements print out perfectly. But what if we wanted to do something where it would print out this first sentence no matter what? Like no matter what happened, it still prints out this first statement, but it prints out the second statement only if the condition is true. So basically what I'm saying is that it prints out the first statement itself if this is true, and if this is false, then it doesn't print it out. It's the same thing it is over here. But if the second condition is also true, it will print out both of them. Whereas when you do it using an elif, either this or this can print. Both of them cannot print together. So how are we supposed to do that? I'll just copy this print statement over here, and I'll erase all of this. So I'll just go back to this part over here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over here. I won't do another indent to go inside. I'm not going, if you imagine it like a file system, I'm not going inside another file. I don't want to create another file so where I can put my data inside the file that already exists. I want to put it next to it. Okay, so I'm not going to do an indent. It's kind of like the brother sister thing. So this will be the brother of whatever I write over here. So in this case, I'm putting another if statement. Okay, so if, and let me put the condition as 8 equals 8. I'm gonna correct this as well. All right, and then I have to put an indent because that's the rule of the if statement. So this indent's normal. And let me print this also worked. Okay, I could have just, pasted that. It also worked. If I run this, look what it does. It prints both of them together. Unlike when we use the else if or elif, it only printed either this if this was true, or either this if this was true and this was false. But in the case of both of them being true, it would print the first one. It would just stop over here. It would break over here. But it did not break over here because it's a nested if, it continued, and because this condition is also true, it printed this as well. So that's what you can do with nested ifs, if you got my point here. And now let's say I have an nested if statement. Now instead of erasing all of this code and going back to writing else if and stuff, what if I wanted it to break over here regardless of whether it was true or false? It would just print this, and then whether this was true or false doesn't matter, it would just break here. The program would stop. I could write the break keyword over here, okay? So I just wrote the break keyword. Now in this scenario specifically, it says break outside loop. Reason being that you cannot just use the break statement anywhere you like. You can't just use it anywhere. So if I run this over here, it gives me an error. Break outside the loop, because we don't have a loop. And even if I indented the break over here, then it will just say unexpected indent. So you cannot put a break anywhere except a loop. It doesn't work normally. So you cannot do a break over here, and because of that, if you wanted to fix all of this, you had to just erase all of this and rewrite the whole program for else ifs and else and all of that stuff. So I just wanted to give you a quick heads up about that, and that's how nested ifs works. Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell as well. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section down below, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.